Greetings and Happy New Year, my friends and fellow nobodies. You guys remember right around this time last year, we put out an episode, and in that episode's intro, I relayed the life factoid that not only had I just had my second child, but I was also unable to stay in the hospital with her because of contracting COVID. Well, once bitten, twice shy, I think is what they say. I don't know if it pertains to this whatsoever, but day before my youngest's first birthday, I again have contracted COVID. So it's been a long, hard road of being sick and shit, but we did. We actually did record an episode, and it's a fun, informative romp through the history of Russia, because if something crazy is going to happen, it's going to happen there more than likely. At least we'll find out about it 100 years down the line. I think my fascination with this episode's content, which I had heard of before, is that if there's one thing in this existence that can truly pique my magical love of the world around us, it's when an act or just an impact of one thing in one place on our planet can be felt across the entire thing, whether that be felt emotionally or felt physically, like this thing pretty much kind of was. Something that can touch and change our planet is the power behind something like that is terrifying. It's Lovecraftian. It's an existential crisis for the world. And when that happens, it's not like we can hit a reset button or go back to a simpler time beforehand. That's the way life is now. We have to live with the fact that we have lived through that fact. It's good to be back, guys. Even if we're still not at 100% yet.
Every day it's getting closer, going faster than a roller coaster. Love like yours will surely come my way. Hey, hey, hey. Every day it's getting faster. Everyone says go ahead and ask her. Love like yours will surely come my way. Hey, hey, hey. Every day seems a little longer.
Well,
Jason is a hooker. It was my plan, and I still fucked it up. So sorry about that, but I think we did it okay.
it's okay. I'll figure it out enough, probably without even that. But welcome, everyone and all, to this new episode of, unless it's actually, maybe it's an old episode that you're listening to. It doesn't matter. You're listening to See No, Hear No, Speak No.
That is true. Because, dude, that's us. Fuck, I almost forgot. Because we suck at this whole schedule thing, when it comes to letting all you dum-dums know about the UFOs, the conspiracies, and the Midas. However, we promise to be better in the future.
Yeah, we've both been ill lately, and of course, with the kids and the families and the Christmas time and all that entails. Hopefully, things have died down well enough for us to goddamn get back on the ball.
Oh, I mean, I literally have a book of of reasons why you have no choice but to excuse me for my absence and my slackery, because you don't fucking know me and you have no choice anyway. So I don't even need this book. It's fictitious anyway, even though
It does
I said
not.
it was
It does
literal.
not exist. No. No. Mm-mm.
Right, but
The opposite of literal, actually. So.
right,
Yeah.
right, because I'm an asshole as well. So
Yeah.
screw you guys.
Yeah, you are. So
However,
tonight is
like I said,
Christopher's night to shine, and he has quite the tale of weaving tales to tell and weave.
oh, shine I shall. Shine I shall, because we are revisiting. I say revisiting, but we're just going back to one of our main topics. In the title and stuff, the UFOs.
That's right.
But is it? We just don't know.
I mean, you do, and we will shortly enough after you say what it is.
It's been a while since we've touched on or done one of these topics. And I felt like, the new year and stuff, it's time to get back into what we love so much. That's not just Moitas. So I figure, why not start off with a bang? This particular one is has been noted, or let's say, I don't know, just called by some to be the equivalent of the Russian Roswell, is what some call it. I don't find it to be that necessarily.
No, just because it's a big, supposedly could be UFO thing that happened doesn't mean that it's the Russian Roswell, since Roswell is an Air Force base that supposedly houses aliens and craft.
Well, I mean, if you want to take just the incident alone and what data has been recovered for both of these incidents, Roswell versus this one, which I suppose, I guess I'll tell you what it is. This is the Tunguska incident that happened near the Tunguska River in Siberia. I'll tell you more about it later, but I guess if you're just talking about like the amount of data and the strangeness of how putting it all together doesn't seem to fit any mainstream theory. They're both pretty far up there of weird shit. But honestly, there have been other accounts with also same types of data that are, in my opinion, way fucking weirder. But this one's still really cool. So, this happened in June 30th of 1908.
1908, man. That's when the men were men and the bratwursts were made of chickens, which is not a good thing. It's just it's nostalgic for a lot of folk. Well, no, it's not nostalgic for any folk. They're all dead.
I think the last living actual eyewitness to this event has passed now.
Oh, poor little out on the ground for him.
Shit, man, 1908, that was, let's see, 2008 would be 100 years, and then 2018 is 110 years, so now we're in 23, so 115 years?
Damn. Man, it seems like it was only yesterday, but I also wasn't there.
Well, one of the interesting points of this and other occurrences that have happened in other countries besides the U.S. is that, sometimes their governments don't, let's say, lock all the information away on purpose just to be vague and then tell some bullshit story. Sometimes they actually leave the shit as public knowledge and continue to send people and scientists and shit in to study it. And this is one of those occurrences. This shit is still being studied to this day.
But which is super weird though, because Russia was the Soviet Union at the time, which means it was it was a red state, it's communist, and it maybe because of that fact they did leave it open, because if it's truly communism, I guess everybody should be able to know about it or learn about it. But I don't know that they would be so naive as to think that the information wouldn't get out elsewhere, or maybe they don't even care if it does at that point, really.
I mean, I know, or at least from what I've heard, Russia does keep some things over the years, has kept some things under wraps.
What?
And
Russia?
has
Nah.
let some things out as far as these UFO and or extraterrestrial and or just completely unexplained, we don't fucking know, situations are concerned. They're not like Chile, where Chile pretty much has started to keep everything on the up and up as far as their investigations are concerned. And they've actually Chile has actually opened up a like a national park section in one of their national parks that is known for being like a hotspot for just witnesses of lights in the sky and stuff like that. And it's just a certain section through this particular national park, forest or whatever, and it's sectioned off, and you can, it's now a tourist attraction. It's pretty cool. But in this case, it's such an interesting occurrence that they have allowed scientists to continue to study this, and the more data they keep pulling from it, thanks to technology and or just fresh eyes, different minds on it, and that kind of thing, the weirder it gets.
Well, I mean, it's already weird when you're taking people's eyes and putting them in your head. Hey, Frank, my eyes is tired. Come sit over here by the spoon chair.
I mean, really, you could use your same eyes and just change the ocular muscles, and that would probably alleviate.
Right, yeah. So Frank, sit next to that knife chair. The knife and spoon chair.
What if they made like muscle relaxer spray for your eyeballs? Or just eye drops, and you could just like drip some muscle relaxer in your eyeballs and fucking...
But would that rejuvenate the muscles in there? Or would it...
Hell no.
It would just make your eyeballs go
wet
all...
noodles.
Yeah, your eyeballs would just go all loosey-goosey and
I mean, you would have to regulate the dosage pretty firmly, but...
How else are you going to get high on it?
Well, your eyeballs... No, I guess they could get high if they really wanted to. Okay, you're getting me off subject, damn it. We got a lot of info to go through.
I don't know that there's a subject.
There really is.
Oh, yeah.
This is what
the
happened.
Tuskegee Airmen. I remember. Go ahead.
This is what had happened, right? There were not a lot of... Nope, I'm not following that joke. Never mind, you can't make me do it. So on the morning of June 30th, 1908, shut your face right now.
You should.
A fiery body flew over the wastes of central Siberia. This is a swampy marshland, and June 30th, I guess, maybe this particular portion of Siberia wouldn't have been covered in 10 feet of ice.
That's what I was wondering, if they had like a layer of frost or something like that. And yeah, okay. I mean, it is Siberia, so June be damned, I think, is what Siberia says. That's their T-shirt slogan. June be damned.
June be damned. So, as far as the witnesses were concerned, as far as like a radius of how far people stretched that they could see this thing, it says... it was clearly seen by inhabitants on the settlements situated on the banks of the Angara, the Yenisei, and Lena rivers, as well as by Tungus nomads in the taiga. So the taiga is a pretty barren region of the of Siberia, and it's fucking huge. So later on, it'll tell you exactly. Like, let me see if I could scroll down to it in this article. See if it'll tell you roughly how many people saw this thing.
Because
it's crazy.
It is a massive number, and it's almost a number that just you don't feel right even accepting, even though you know it's right, because it's so crazy. It's so crazy far away where people saw it and then felt the impact.
Oh yeah, they could feel and measure the blast waves in London. That's fucking ridiculous. Maybe I'll just have to get to it. Total number of eyewitness testimonies is about 700, and they tallied all that up in 1981. What they're calling the Tunguska Space Body, the TSB, was seen at a distance of up to 1,000 kilometers from the place of its explosion. And then it gives you a picture of the map and where, there's a lot of fucking graphs and shit in this. Yeah. Okay, so scrolling back up to the top, because this is the actual scientific information, which I think is awesome because it shows what mainstream isn't telling you in all the other articles. Like I was saying earlier, I read a buttload of articles and they're all the fucking same except for this one.
Thanks a lot, fat cats up in Moscow. Jesus.
Don't even know if it's Moscow. I think it's America that's doing it. So that's a lot of fucking people, and that's a big distance that motherfuckers were able to see this thing. And that's just to see it.
Yeah.
There were eyewitnesses that gave reports that said they saw it shooting in and looked like it was descending, and then it made like a turn.
Like how severe a turn are we talking?
Well, it wasn't like a 90 degree. They didn't say it was like a right angle turn or anything that crazy, but any deviation of the path of, let's say, what mainstream is trying to call a meteor, or
right, because meteors don't turn.
Other theories I'll get to later. Literally anything else coming from shooting at this kind of speed, which I'll also get to later.
Yeah, to be on fire.
There's no maneuvering. It's a straight shot, straight trajectory. So eyewitnesses sound fucking crazy when they say shit like that. But this is what they say happened. So we'll put that to the side for now. So what they're saying is when it happened, which here's the coordinates, the airburst. Now they're calling it an airburst. The airburst devastated about 2,150 kilometers squared.
What is that? What's that?
Tiger region,
miles wise. Do you know?
Oh shit. Hang on. Let's see.
What's the conversion on 250,000 kilometers?
I will pull up the conversion right now. km. Wait. 2 miles. Okay. 155,342 miles.
Jesus, 155,342 square miles is the area that is directly affected by this impact.
Correct.
Like directly physically touched by it. Wow.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah, that's fucking huge. Like on a scale that you can't really even imagine, because why would you be able to? You're, 6 feet tall at best, most of you. So this flattened something close to 30 million trees.
Oof.
Over an area of 200 kilometers. Vegetation was burnt, so 200 kilometers. Okay, so it's still 124.274 miles.
Jesus.
Worth of trees were still burnt, and vegetation, so the ground and whatever else, brush and all that. And they're saying that alone, the vegetation that was burnt for as far away and yada yada that it was, is indicative of a really powerful flash of light.
A really powerful flash of light.
Yes,
That's what
and that was published. That conclusion was published once in 2004, again in 2009, and then again in 2012. That's pretty serious.
Yeah, that seems like literally anyone anywhere near there would be blinded totally.
Right. Well, so here's one thing that that this article eventually is getting at, if you pay attention. It's what it's getting at is that all of these scientists, yes, have been allowed to come in and do all of this work and publish their work and their papers and get recognition for their findings and all of that good stuff. But one thing is that they're all specialists in their fields. Awesome. So they're doing good work for those particular points of data that they're studying. But none of them are, let's say, for all intents and purposes, a jack of all trades scientist that can take all of this data and put it all together and say, hey, what the fuck? You know, there's still no explanation, even when they do try to do that.
Well, I mean, is there no cooperation between different kinds of scientists of you know, sharing information to try to get a better, bigger picture?
From what it seems like, no. And from, if the Big Bang Theory taught me anything, no, scientists do not share their fucking information between each other unless they are on a team, you know, the funded team together or some shit like that. No, that shit is very, very hush hush.
Right.
Between each other. They have to wait until something is published before somebody can take that research and then either redo it or try to disprove it or whatever the fuck they do. But yeah, no, it's very hush hush. So what's happening is that all of these points of data and things are being established over 100+ years worth of studies, and not only is no one qualified or group qualified to come together and put it all together and come to any kind of consensus on what they think it could have been. Not only that, but there's no one that can just take all of the current methods and do one full sweep, you know, of everything they could possibly do, you know, currently right now, and put it all together. Like, it's not happening. Maybe it can't happen, we don't know, but it's not happening. And that's basically what this is saying needs to happen.
I mean, I could do it. I just don't feel like it.
I mean, it sounds like a lot of work. And it makes sense that that's what would need to happen. But from after I get through all of this, it sounds to me personally, and we'll ask your opinion at the end, Jay, but it sounds to me personally like even if and when they are able to do that, they're still not going to have any real idea of what the fuck this could have been.
Well, so, yeah, you can't have a concrete kind of theory about it because nothing there it still exists of it. So, you know, what do you do at that point?
Yeah, well, that's the thing. You have to study the land, you have to study the after effects, and then you got to take all that data and, you know, do science stuff with it. I mean, so the one of the documentaries that I watched, along with all of these fucking articles and shit, because I did not want to get this information wrong. But one of the documentaries I watched, I didn't notice when it came out, the videography and everything, quality, sound looked maybe like it was from early 2000s, maybe 2010s at best.
So it looked like a VHS kind of thing?
A little better than that. It looked like early DVD. Okay. But at that time, they were on camera interviewing the last living eyewitness.
Okay.
So yeah, she's long gone by now. But another thing she said about this, aside from the fact that it turned, it did not come in straight. Another thing she said is that it looked disc shaped, although she didn't mention that it looked metallic. She didn't mention that it looked like a machine of any kind. She just said at first it looked disc-shaped, but it did have a fiery tail coming off the back that
You
was
sure
long.
she didn't just have a lisp and was saying dicks shaped?
Well, she was speaking whatever the hell Siberian Russian is. I don't know what the fuck she
They
was
are
speaking.
famous
So
for their lisps.
the what you call it, the closed caption translation said that she said it was disc shaped. And then when it was coming in straight and descending, and then when it actually turned, she said it plateaued and wasn't falling, wasn't descending anymore
So,
when it turned.
So this fiery body, fiery cosmic body, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
sure.
It's coming in, let's just say at a 75-degree angle.
Ooh,
And
that's sharp.
and then at some point it doesn't just turn, but it levels out instead of continuing downward to spike the ground.
Right. So a 75-degree angle would be damn near fucking straight down. And this thing was coming
I
in,
don't
let's
know
say,
math
more
or
like
geometry or your last name.
All right, so they think of a plane coming in for a landing. That's more like what this thing was doing. It was coming in at that type of lateral angle, not more straight up and down like it was bombing straight into the fucking ground.
I'll think about
And
it.
so yes,
because
that's
I want
that's
to,
what it did.
not because you told me to.
It leveled out for a second, long enough to turn a little bit, and then continued to descend into what everybody thought was a crash.
I'm really, really very curious to know if it was just like a slight lazy list of a turn, or if it was like a noticeable like U-turn of a turn, you know?
I mean, I'm curious too, but at the same time, it really wouldn't matter the speed that this thing was going. If it was anything other than being controlled by something, there's no way it could have turned.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, anything interstellar, like I try to keep this in mind. Maybe I'm incorrect by doing this, but orbit of this planet, which means it's the speed this planet is spinning and everything that's spinning around it, is 17,000 miles an hour.
Yeah, we're really moving it and not even knowing about it.
So anything that comes in from outside of that breaks that without getting caught in it is coming in well over 17,000 miles an hour. And it's big enough to deny our gravitational orbital pull. So a lot of times, now if it's a meteorite or something like that, a lot of times those will burn up, and they have been known to explode before hitting the ground.
Mm-hmm.
But any of those records and studies that have been done still don't apply to this, and I'll get to that.
Mm-hmm.
So they had designated it the Tunguska meteorite, but that's not, we're not.
That's kind of just the
no
easy.
solid.
That's just the easy answer to be able to throw out.
Right. So yes, then this article is then calling it the Tunguska space body. So the TSB. So at the moment of explosion, which they have determined down to within an accuracy of 10 seconds, at the moment of explosion, and also the accuracy of the height, the altitude at which it exploded, because they are saying that it definitely did not hit the ground.
Right. Because there's no crater, there's no impact.
Right, there's no impact crater whatsoever. The trees and everything I'll get to in just a minute.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a little more difficult for them to determine the altitude, but they're saying they've narrowed it down to a range of between 6 and 8 kilometers, which is only about 4 or 5 miles above the
Earth's crust.
the surface.
Yeah. Wow.
Which is crazy close.
It's crazy close, but like when you first hear that number, or at least for me, 4 or 5 miles up in the air doesn't seem like that far away. You know what I mean? I get that it is, especially when explaining how giant fucking massive explosions happened. But it's just weird. Like the way that the trees are and shit, you would just think that this thing blew up like 4 or 5 feet from the ground.
Well, yeah, and I'll definitely get into the weirdness about the way the trees are in just a minute. But yeah, that 4 or 5 miles does not seem like very far when you hear about the amount of power that came out of this thing. So for the sciencey people, they're saying that the total energy released at Tunguska, here the discrepancy varies, but estimations reach more than 2 orders of magnitude. So
I ordered some magnitude last night. Yeah.
Did you?
I ordered.
Was it sloppy?
No, it was 4 orders of magnitude. It was it was well done, but it wasn't well done. You know.
It's disgraceful.
Good.
So they're saying it was either from 1.5 by 10 to the 16th joules, published in 2008.
I know that joules are a measurement of sciencey stuff, but the way you said it really bothered me just now.
I'll get to more of what that is. Or 2.9 by 10 to the 18th joules. And that was published in 1982.
Are those family joules, or are they regular joules? Are they,
They are, I don't know, bigger than gigawatts, I'm pretty sure.
Is it bigger than 1.21
I'm
gigawatts?
Sure. So that equates to, let's see, where if I can find that.
Oh, hold on. Don't leave. Let's see, stupid headphone bastard. Hold on. Okay, now I can hear you again. Sorry, I had to take one of my headphones out. It was getting somewhat uncomfortable, but then for some reason, putting that one away, it like reset both of them.
Oh.
But I'm back. I can hear you.
Okay. So.
Queso.
That amount of power, they're saying, equals to somewhere around 15 megatons of TNT.
15 megatons. How many tons is in a megaton?
I don't fucking know, dude. Which another article is saying that is somewhere around 1,000 times what was dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki.
Jesus Christ. 1,000 times bigger than the fat boy and the little man.
Yeah.
Crazy.
They're saying this thing had to have been twice the size of New York. Somewhere, some like fucking massive.
Okay, and just real quick, a megaton is a metric megaton. It's a unit of mass, which is equal to 1 million metric tons. So, it being like hundreds,
a unit of mass.
It being hundreds of megatons, and each megaton being 1 million metric tons. That seems like it's a little. It's like overkill. Come on, thing from space, calm down.
That's disgusting.
Well,
So, among the many hypotheses that have been proposed since 1927 to explain this, I'm gonna try to run down the list pretty quickly. Most of them are basically the same fucking thing, just it's changing little bits of. Anyway, so. We have, I think we got 12 in total here. Number 1, it was the arrival of a huge iron meteorite that broke into pieces high above the Earth's surface. Its large pieces and, quote, a fiery jet of burning hot gases, end quote, struck the surface and leveled the trees. that was published in 1927. I'm not going to try to say all these dudes' names.
No,
so
that's
just
okay. Yeah, the name thing.
take it as that.
Not important. But
Number
didn't,
2.
Didn't you just have a stream of flaming hot gases before we started? That
I
couldn't
did.
find. Yeah, you couldn't find toilet paper for.
That's right. That's right. Number 2 says it was the impact of a huge iron or stony meteorite. So basically the same thing. Number 3, the forest devastation in the Tunguska taiga was caused by the bow wave, which accompanied the meteorite flying in the atmosphere and hit the ground after the meteorite had been disrupted by the forces of air resistance.
So basically, the meteorite, if it were, is so fucking massive that it created like a pocket of wind or whatever at the ground level that was big enough for it to compress it so perfectly that it'd make itself explode.
I think that's what that's saying.
I like that. It's a good theory, Jason.
It's a pretty cool theory. That was published in 1959. Number 4, thermal explosion of the icy core of a comet.
Okay.
Interesting. It was published in 1960.
It would still have to be a fucking huge comet, right?
Huge. I mean, all comets are pretty fucking huge as far as that's concerned. They are not just meteorites. Number 5, a lump of, quote, space snow, end quote, of extremely low density that completely collapsed in the atmosphere. Its bow wave leveled the taiga. So
Okay.
basically the same thing as the other thing, just changing what it says it is.
So
From
it's
an iron thing to
yeah.
a space snow.
It's sonic boom, basically.
Right. That was published in 1975. Then in 76, somebody said the fast fragmentation of a stony asteroid or comet core. The exact same thing as the other two. In 2008, somebody said the low altitude airburst of a swiftly moving stony asteroid. The exact same thing. Then back in 86, somebody said vapor cloud explosion of a comet core. The exact same thing.
Just worded ever so slightly differently.
Basically calling us all dumbasses if we're not paying attention.
I mean, we
Number
are.
9. Well, we are. Apparently the people that allowed them to publish this dog shit, it wasn't.
Dog shit?
So, number 9. Shut your face.
I liked it.
Chemical explosion of a fragment of comet Enki. So they're naming a specific comet that this had to, that they claim this was. So a chemical explosion of a fragment of comet Enki that was caught by the gravitational field of the Earth and made 3 revolutions around it, after which it entered the atmosphere and evaporated, forming an explosive cloud over Tunguska. Then the cloud detonated. So the exact same thing at the end, but claiming that it was a fragment blown off of this comet Enki, and that it specifically took 3 laps around the Earth before coming in at that trajectory.
Right. And well, and
right.
but at the end where it says that, which created a lot of dust or whatever, and then that exploded. So basically it would have broken up in the atmosphere, created a lot of dust and debris, kind of, but smaller since it wasn't a central hit, and then the dust itself somehow, through the sheer speed of the impact, ignited.
Well, yes, I think essentially that is what they're saying.
Okay, cool.
What they're not explaining is how that could happen. What would be the ignition
I mean,
source.
everything's technically flammable, Chris. You just have to have heat intense enough to cause the reaction.
Yeah, okay, I suppose so. So, number 10 says, annihilation of a meteorite consisting of antimatter. That was published in 1948.
Like that is a powerful, massive explosion, but I just feel like antimatter would have just bored a permanent hole tunnel through the Earth on its way out.
Right? Well, yeah, I would think that would have been much more devastating too, as per some of the studies of, that have been done in more recent times than this, was published in 1948. Number 11 says a natural thermonuclear explosion of a comet core. The same fucking thing from 1989. And number 12 says a nuclear explosion of an alien spacecraft. Now, here's the funny thing about that.
Is that you believe that it's true?
No,
Okay.
is that was published before the Roswell incident happened. Now, granted, this was published in Russia. This was a Russian scientist or whatever. But still, that happened. Now, granted, Roswell is well known that it is not at all the first on file or reported or studied UFO crash or sighting, but the fact that this happened in 1908, and then Roswell didn't happen until 1947, so this incident had 46 years of being studied before this person said that. And then the following year, almost, so July of 1947 is when the Roswell crash happened. And if you remember from the story of the dude who coined the phrase flying saucers, that also happened before the Roswell incident. So
Coincidence?
we got a lot of shit.
I think, duh.
Duh. So, at the end of that, it's saying that all of these hypotheses were met with considerable difficulties when trying to account for all of the peculiarities of this event.
I say we blame Jim and go home, finally. Let's just say Jim did it. I miss my kids.
Well, I mean, you can miss your kids all you want. They still smell like turds.
Yeah, you're right. I'm going to stay and we're going to figure this thing out for real. Let's do it.
Stinking babies. So, the primary problem with the conventional interpretation of the Tunguska event, as per this paper that was published, is that there is no trace of either asteroidal, or cometary material at the site of the explosion. So, no fragments of meteor, no nothing, no none of that.
All right.
For hundreds of miles.
Okay.
As far as they have recovered, what the only physical thing that they have recovered are fragments. They claim metallic fragments that are smaller than 1 millimeter, but there was a fuck ton of them. Now, this paper is saying that they were found on the ground, scattered around the ground for miles. But some of the other documentaries and things are saying that they were also found in the trees that were mowed down by this event. So that's weird. None of them are actually saying what they are.
Yeah, I was about to say, so there's been no analysis of the material to give us a better glimpse at what at least the fucking thing is made of?
No. I mean, the evidence that has been recovered, as far as that physical evidence, nothing that I have read is saying anything about analyses that were done on them or where they currently are. So we don't know who's got them. I'm assuming the Russian government. This did happen long enough ago that KGB agents and agencies were involved. So it goes on to talk about more of the data, which is pretty friggin' weird when it all comes down to it. So it's saying that there's a serious methodological problem that's being overlooked, which is the need to take into consideration all of the imperial data and to reconstruct the event before building any models of it. So that makes a lot of sense, to reconstruct the event as best you can. But when you start looking at all of this evidence and putting it all together, it's really difficult to reconstruct this event with any conventional theory of it just being space debris. So let's see. It goes on to say, more often than not, it is only some general characteristics of the leveled forest area that are taken into consideration, and some characteristics of, atmospheric conditions and seismic conditions and all that other kind of stuff. So they're not even, they haven't even yet done full in-depth to the degree of technology that we have to date. They need to go back and redo it all. So they have grouped the evidence into three main groups, and that would be material traces, instrumental traces, and informational traces.
Okay.
So
explain yourself, sir.
Okay, so the material traces would be actual physical evidence from the site, such as these metallic pieces and this other stuff here. So specifically, with the leveling of the trees, this was studied by a dude whose last name is Fast. Actually, that's a pretty cool last name. And he dubbed this, his findings, the Fast's butterfly. So over an area of 70 kilometers, so 70 across, 55 long. So let's see how much that is. 70 across, 55 long. So 43 and a half miles across. And 34 and, 0.17 long. So that's a pretty fucking big ass area.
Indeed.
So that was specifically the leveling of the trees that he studied in this particular area, because what he found was that there isn't just a specific pattern as if something came streaking from one single direction and detonated over it. It should be very evident to show the trajectory and all of this. What he's finding is that, without giving you a bunch of fucking numbers that don't make any damn sense to me personally, because I'm not a math guy like this, but what he's finding is that there are actually two separate trajectories, either meaning this thing came in, detonated, and flew off, or two came in, one detonated, and the other flew off.
I like the first one, where it's just like, oh man, I got a fart so bad, and so he comes down to earth, and that just a big explosion. He's like, oh, I feel so much better, and he's just taking off. It's but the game of chicken that ends badly for one of these alien spacecraft is also, it's a fun one to think about.
I mean, it is. It is, because what else? I mean, I'll leave it up to your speculation, kids, boys and girls, but what else could have done such a thing?
Angels.
So the trees
in the outfield?
I don't know.
Angels in the outfield. Go ahead.
No, you're going to have to talk amongst yourselves about that, because that ain't me. So one cool thing is that the trees themselves that are actually all the way knocked down are actually kind of laying, let's say, weaved across each other in kind of a herringbone sort of pattern. That also tends to happen. Now, I'm not saying that these two things can be compared as possibly the same thing, but that sort of pattern laying of the vegetation also happens in crop circle, and not the ones that people do personally with a board and a string and shit like that. Like actual crop circle occurrences where it can be proven that no human was out there.
Racist.
The pattern of the way the plants are laid down is mathematical. It's perfect. It's crazy.
Mathematical, dude. Sorry.
So
Brick.
this is pretty cool that this guy has found that the evidence is showing there's two separate trajectories going on, both coming from the same direction. But that's another weird thing. How is that?
How?
So the bow wave itself that he's saying from the detonation is showing that the trees aren't just laying down the way you would think they would, right? At any height.
Right.
So this is saying because the bow wave travels symmetrically relative to the flying body's trajectory, right? Okay. This axis is in fact the projection of the trajectory. Okay, so it's talking about this other separate axis. It attests that at the final stage of its flight, the Tunguska space body was flying over the area of forest destruction in just this direction, that is from the east southeast to west northwest, so at a little bit of an angle, and in the middle of So, in the middle of the 1970s, Fast and his colleagues, having studied the additional data on the leveled forest collected in the field, concluded that there existed another belt of fallen trees showing a feeble herringbone pattern and running at an angle of 99 degrees to the east from its geographical meridian. So, almost exactly from east to west. So it's the first one...
The hit and run spaceship that ran.
Basically, that is what it sounds like. One is coming east, southeast to west, northwest at an angle. Mm-hmm. The other one's coming almost directly across it.
Wow.
And that would never happen if it was just one single detonation at one single point.
What about
that's
if when
fucking
it
weird.
Exploded 4 or 5 miles from above Earth? What if its own explosion was so crazy powerful that it sent a smaller yet still quite substantial chunk in basically a check mark's freaking trajectory? So like, what if it just shot it back, and it's just a smaller piece of the insanely large first piece?
That's possible, but still, it would have to have landed somewhere. And
not if it's allergic to Siberia.
I mean, everything's allergic to Siberia.
Not
but,
Siberians. They dig it there. It's weird.
So it goes on to state that quite remarkably, there is an area of about 8 kilometers in diameter at the epicenter of the explosion where trees were scorched and devoid of branches, but remained standing upright like telegraph poles.
Okay, so they got all of the damage fire-wise, but not a whole lot of the percussive, like, physical shove.
Right. And that's weird. So they then went on to dub them telegraph poles. But that particular phenomenon points to the effect of a blast wave with its origin at a height of 6 to 8 kilometers. Although the Tunguska explosion is often referred to as the largest impact event in recorded history, there was, in fact, no impact in the strict sense of this word.
He's trying to make a fool of us.
It's weird. You sometimes in these types of cases you have to put. I mean, you don't have to, but it's easier to put a simple explanation and just let people go on about their day.
Mm-hmm. I want to know the information, but I'm also lazy and kind of dumb. Can you just give me a synopsis?
Well, yeah, that's kind of what I'm trying to do, is sum it all up.
No, not you dumb.
Boys and girls out there.
I'm mentioning the situation you just talked about.
Oh, I know. And I'm just never mind.
Dumb.
So, to add to that, a trace of the bow wave in the leveled forest extends westward beyond the epicentral zone, which can mean that a fairly massive body flew westward after the explosion. Like we said.
Mm-hmm.
That's pretty crazy.
Yeah,
fairly massive body.
Like, it would just have to be such a gigantic thing. Like, it's so gigantic a thing for it to, like I said, to forcefully rocket off a part of itself, still large enough to make people take notice, but it's fucking crazy.
It is. It's really, and it gets crazier.
Oh,
So, as far as they were talking about, the flash of light and how it burned the trees and the vegetation, it too is butterfly-like in its pattern when they studied it.
was this thing just a gigantic butterfly? You can tell me.
I wish that would be cool if we got a Mothra hiding out on this planet. It
That's
might be
not a
interesting.
butterfly. That's a moth.
It would be better if it
That's
was
the
I
hobo
mean, it would
version
be-
of the butterfly.
Oh, you shush it.
Mm-hmm.
It would be better if it's a Mothra than a Batra, but that's for a different episode.
I don't know all them
Different
names,
podcast
Joe.
altogether. So the burn zone is basically showing the same thing, that its axis of symmetry was running from east to west. It extends up to 16 kilometers to the east from the epicenter, with two separate zones being noticeable within it. The zone of intense burns and the zone of weak burns, right? So that would make sense, how the heat dissipates.
What
and
about the
yada,
zone
yada.
of healing?
The zone of... I don't know. I got nothing. Theoretically, it says, traces of severe burning must have remained at the center of this figure and those of weak burning at its periphery. Makes perfect sense. In reality, the picture looks more complicated. The zone of weak burning extends from the east into the zone of severe burning, and along the axis of symmetry, the burning is considerably weaker than that at a distance from it. So, at the very center of the figure, that this little drawing they have down here, there is evidence of the maximum level of the light flash. So, I think what that's saying is that... Wait. So, the zone of weak burning extends from the east. So if it's going from the east to the west, it goes from the east into the zone of severe burning and along the axis of symmetry. Okay, so it's as if it's not burning as hot until it gets to the main point, central point, then it burns real hot, and then it keeps going. So the weak burns are before and after the epicenter instead of
Okay,
surrounding it.
That's a little weird.
Right, which kind of goes to making this strange butterfly effect to the pattern of burning, and kind of corroborates what the other guy was saying about the trajectory. So that's friggin' weird. So, having examined the traces of burning, in 1967, they calculated that the heat radiation from the light flash in the overall radiation of energy from the explosion was not less than 10% and perhaps even 25% of the total energy released. So that's kind of a funky, that's hard to understand what they're saying there.
Okay, so
But
the radiation that they can measure is only, what did you say percentage-wise?
10 and possibly as high as 25%.
All right, so the things that they can quantify are only 10 to possibly 25% of the entire, like, full-on explosion. So it had to
Okay.
have been at least 75% or, whatever, 75% more
Non-radioactive.
powerful. No, that's just saying that that's the only radiation that they can find and search and track. The other stuff had to have been somewhat the same if it's all exploding from the same goddamn thing. But they're saying that the full force of the explosion is 75% more powerful than the stuff that they themselves can keep track of.
Oh, okay. I was not getting that from it, but that makes a lot of sense. Okay, so it was therefore not only a high altitude explosion, but also a high temperature one. Of course, for a high temperature explosion of a comet core or stone asteroid, the small cosmic body must have been moved through the atmosphere at a great velocity, upwards of tens of kilometers per second.
Wow.
That's fucking crazy fast. And do you understand, like, I don't even understand it, but do you have any idea of the size of how big this fucking thing had to be able to be moving at that speed and you to still fucking see it with your eyes?
They did say that it was like the size of New York or whatever, right?
I think so. Yeah. If I remember correctly, I did say that, and I think I did read that. Twice the size, actually. That's fucking insane. So tens of kilometers per second. I don't even know how fucking fast that is. That's retarded.
Yeah, it's really fast.
So on to these metallic remnants.
Yeah.
So they said, although some silicate and metallic, in parentheses, containing cosmochemical elements, i.e. nickel, iron, and cobalt, they're little spherules. So these tiny little balls that they found, that were, like I said, smaller than 1 millimeter. So these tiny, 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 tiny little balls.
That's what you have, yes.
In the peat and soil. The number of these spherules is too small for an icy comet core, to say nothing about a stony asteroid. The overall mass of space matter spread over Tunguska in 1908 was a few tons at best. But a powerful explosion of the comet core entering the Earth's atmosphere could have happened only if both its mass and velocity had been very high. Okay,
gotcha.
so that's saying there's reasons why they explode, and only specific reasons. They don't just all do that. So it says, according to well-justified estimations, the mass of the hypothetical Tunguska comet could not have been less than, I don't know what these numbers mean. Most probably, these microscopic spherules were due to the usual background fall of extraterrestrial matter. So
they're just the whisper dust. The whisper fart left behind.
Okay. All right.
That's
However,
what it is.
some local geochemical anomalies have been discovered at the epicenter of the Tunguska explosion. So now we're getting into past the trees into the soil and stuff. The soil and peat have been enriched with rare earth elements, such as buttload of ones I've never heard of: samarium, europium, terbium, ytterbium, spelled with a Y, and yttrium, and I guess there's a few others, as well as barium, mercury, copper, titanium, zinc, and some other elements. That was all noted in 1980 and 84. So that's kind of crazy, because then it goes on to say that the ratio of these more rare elements is crazy. It's ridiculous. The content of terbium exceeds the norm by 55 times. That of the thulium is exceeded by 130 times. The europium by 150 times. And
so the levels that they're finding are just astronomically over what they should be in the area.
Exactly.
Nice.
The ytterbium is the last one, and it's over 800 times what the norm should be in any normal place. And that was all published again in 1999. So that's pretty crazy, and it too shows a bit of a butterfly effect to the pattern at which they're finding this stuff. So it goes on to state that the levels and all this other shit has enriched the soil to the point that the new and surviving trees grew twice as fast. in those
Huh.
areas where the soil is crazy.
So explosions is good for trees after all. That tree lied to me.
That tree lied to me. Patterns of similar shapes are found at Tunguska for the surface distributions of lanthanum, lead, silver, and manganese, but for iron, nickel, and cobalt and chromium, the patterns of their distribution had no association with any special points or direction of the area of leveled forest. So basically, they're saying that they can tell what's indigenous and what levels and what isn't. So yeah, this it's saying that the iron, the nickel, and the cobalt, all cool. Those didn't have anything to do with it. All the other crazy ones, that shouldn't fucking be there.
Right.
Not the way it's showing up. So yeah, the ecological consequences turned into, like I said, a very fast restoration of the forest after the catastrophe and accelerated growth of trees, both young and those which survived the incident. And that was published in 1963 and 67. And the second thing was that a sharply increased frequency of mutation in the local pines was noted in 68 and 1975. There was also discovered a rare mutation among the natives of the region, which arose in the 1910s in one of the settlements nearest to the epicenter. Now, in that one documentary that was showing, interviewing the last living person, she had made mention of the fact that a lot of people that she knew and in surrounding areas started getting sick and dying of what can be likened to radiation poisoning. So yeah, the presence of feeble, it says, but noticeable radioactive fallout is an empirical fact, confirmed by the findings of the peaks of radioactivity dated 1908 in trees that had withered before 1945. So 1945 is when they started all the A-bomb tests.
Well, couldn't it? I mean, no matter what it was, really, the material of it, like comets and Cupids and Donners and Blitzens, they all have radiation inside them, right? Like when they explode this massive thing, like it's not like a crazy, world-changing, shocking discovery that they have found radiation.
Right. Anything coming from outer space is fucking drenched in it, for sure. So yeah, I'm not gonna bore you with all the radiation talk, but it is. They're saying it wasn't quite as bad as what the claims were and the reports were of the deaths of the radiation poisoning was. So I don't. They're not really going into much of that.
Right.
But it does go on to say, which I think is kind of cool, just because it sounds kind of cool, but it's probably very dangerous. Within 10 to 15 kilometers from the epicenter, the level of thermoluminescence of local minerals considerably exceeds the background level. So, luminescence is, that they glow.
Got that glow.
Right. Thermoluminescence, I assume, is that they glow because of
Heat.
right. So, the zone of the increased thermoluminescent levels has an axis of symmetry running almost directly from east to west. So, if you think back, what they're calling the original event was running from east-southeast to west-northwest. All of these other things are showing pretty much basically east to west. So, which one detonated and which one just flew over, we don't know necessarily. Not even pinpointing that it was two things, but the evidence is kind of showing that it was two things.
Yeah. Well, I mean...
And that the first one went diagonally, the second one left more evidence somehow, which is... What?
Yeah, so there's technically a smaller site exactly like Tunguska, not that far from it somewhere.
Could very well be, yeah. But they haven't found one yet.
That's some bullshit, man.
All right, so that's pretty friggin' crazy. So then it goes on to the instrumental traces, which is, obviously our seismographs and shit like that.
And jazz
that
piano,
picked up.
yes. Yeah.
Right. In 1976, the leading Russian specialist in monitoring foreign nuclear tests, Professor, that guy's name, he was asked by the Committee on Meteorites of the USSR Academy of Sciences to determine the magnitude of the Tunguska explosion. He examined in great details these seismograms and concluded that the most probable magnitude of the explosion... Oh, shit. Wow. So that other article was wrong. The probable magnitude of the explosion was 30 to 50 megatons.
Wow. And really, it's not the other article being incorrect. It's just papers and studies done at different times. So,
Yeah, quite possibly. So, in their attempts to explain why this is so weird, they went on to show a microbarograph. Microbarograph.
Okay.
So anyway, it measures variations of atmospheric pressure when explosions and things like that happen. Mm-hmm. So when a non-nuclear explosion happens, the graph looks one way. When a nuclear explosion happens, it looks another way. Both of those are pretty obviously that. Mm-hmm. The Tunguska, on the other hand, looks crazy compared to those two. But it does look more closely related to a nuclear explosion. The way that this thing it has picked up the data. Which is interesting because a lot of other things are basically pointing to that too. It says, I'm sorry, I'm trying to skip over the ridiculous like number info that just doesn't fucking mean anything to us normies. So it's saying that it's definitely weird because it did register as being recognized as something that was nuclear.
Wow. The strength of the explosion fooled them into thinking it was nuclear. That's fucking awesome.
Mm-hmm. So the nuclear explosion with magnitude of several megatons that was carried out at the U.S. testing ground on Marshall Islands in 1954. So they did test of that. A third curve is a record of airwaves from the Tunguska. Okay, so they was just talking about what their control groups were. The recording was made in 1908 in London. Wow. The barogram evidence that they're using from Tunguska was actually measured in London. Mm-hmm. And you can see how different they are. They used a lot of words to explain that. Minutes after the explosion, a magnetic storm began. So now you get like this big crazy electromagnetic storm that happens after this.
And then right after that, Andre the Giant came to town and kicked everybody in the balls.
Oh, God. Can you imagine the size of the flame that dude's farts could shoot?
Man.
Oh, my goodness. And he was noted to really enjoy fart bombing people, too.
That's embarrassing.
That's huge. So, this magnetic storm lasted for 5 hours after the explosion.
Damn.
It could be tested or measured for 5 hours.
Shit, damn.
Yeah. The Magnetographic and Meteorological Observatory in Irkutsk did these measurements. No other magnetometric station on this planet detected it. and that was stated in 1964.
How is that possible?
That I don't know. I didn't even notice. I didn't read that earlier. That's a pretty interesting statement, though.
Yeah, that's kind of insane. Yeah. Anyway.
So, it says during 7 hours before the explosion, the geomagnetic field was very calm. 6 minutes after the body exploded, the intensity of the geomagnetic field abruptly increased by 4 little n big T, whatever that means, and remained at that level for about 2 minutes. This was the initial phase of the local geomagnetic storm. Then began the second phase, which is called the ride phase, which lasted about 18 minutes, and the magnetic craziness rose again by exponential amounts. Blah, 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 blah. Numbers, numbers, numbers. We don't understand. Actually,
You get him. You
that
get
kind
him.
of sounded fun.
No.
So yeah, it returned like 5 hours later to its normal thing. The only parallel for this that had been studied was the artificial geomagnetic storms that occurred during the high altitude nuclear tests. So, yet again pointing to some sort of nuclear explosion or something exploded that had huge amounts of radiation that it was toting along with it. Which is crazy because it happened in 1908. Wasn't no A-bombs or splitting of atoms in 1908.
I mean, that we know of.
So what the fuck was this thing, right? Or at least not on this planet.
Time travelers. That's who it was. Deal with it. It's the truth.
So, these local geomagnetic storms were first recorded in August of 1958 when thermonuclear charges of some 4 megatons in magnitude were detonated over Johnson Island at altitudes of 76 and 42 kilometers above the surface. As it was soon established, this effect was generated by hard radiation from the fiery ball of the high-altitude nuclear explosion. Under the influence of this radiation, the level of ionization in the ionosphere increased sharply. There appear in it electrical currents, and the magnetic disturbance occurs. So, yeah, that only happens.
There was so much. There's so much ion cloud left over after the explosion that it was then integrated into the ionosphere, which made a notable change in the magnetic pull of the Earth.
No, not quite that serious, but it was. They didn't know how to. I think they had never studied anything remotely like that until they detonated these bombs and were like, "Hey, look at that! That's very almost identical to this."
Right.
So yeah, they noticed all the different disturbances that they could measure and likened the two to each other. So it says great pains have been taken to explain the Tunguska geomagnetic storm while not referring to the nuclear model of this event, particularly via the action of the blast wave or the bow wave from the flying TSB, the space body, on the ionosphere. So the blast wave or the bow wave, its effect on the ionosphere is what they're
Studying.
not looking into.
Yeah.
None of these attempts were successful to study this. The proposed non-nuclear mechanisms, to explain that, none of the attempts were successful. None of those theories made any sense to explain that. The proposed non-nuclear mechanisms were especially ineffective in explaining this because of the long duration of the geomagnetic storm and the fact that it was a very local effect. In 2003, speaking in Moscow at, the 95th anniversary of the Tunguska problem, And that is in quotes. That's a conference that they hold every fucking year. Wow. So this one dude, KG Ivanov, agreed that the blast wave in itself could not have produced the geomagnetic effect. Additional ionization of the ionosphere over the place of the explosion was necessary. So, what does that fucking tell you?
I don't know. It tells me that someone's about to be irresponsible.
That tells me that, yet again, another scientist studying specifically a different angle or set of evidences, not referring to or basing it on any of these other scientists' work, is saying the same thing about the evidence of there being two separate bodies flying and doing whatever they did at the same time that this was detonated. Because he said additional ionization of the ionosphere over the place of the explosion was necessary to cause that type of and that huge and long of an electrical geomagnetical storm.
That is what she said, yes.
So, yet again, we have one thing flying in at an angle, east-southeast to west-northwest, causing a detonation and continuing to fly off as per the burn evidence and the blast evidence of the trees. And another large, huge fucking body of whatever flying through at the same time, at the same speed, roughly, had to be, specifically causing another disturbance, an extra disturbance in the ionosphere, and flying off, continuing to fly off in a little bit different trajectory.
Dickheads. Inconsiderate is what it is.
Yep, it's pretty fucking weird. Then it goes on to the eyewitness, some of the eyewitness reports, but it doesn't actually go in, give any of them. It just says that if you're going to look at all of this and really study it, you have to take into account what the eyewitnesses are saying and try to put their lines of sight and vantage points and, things like that into the model or into the recreation before you make the model. Because, yes, you obviously can't believe that all of them could explain or, but even what they're saying doesn't quite make sense as to how something of a meteoric or asteroidal origin could have done this. So, in conclusion, I believe, is where we're at now, pretty much. Yeah, I'm gonna sum it up. Okay, wait, just a little more. Data obtained inside each sector made it possible to create a statistically reliable and coherent image of the phenomenon, but these two images are different. In the south, the phenomenon, including thunder-like sounds, lasted half an hour or more. The brightness was comparable to the sun, and the body looked white or bluish. It had a short tail of the same color. After its flight, there remained in the sky iridescent bands resembling a rainbow and stretching along the trajectory of the body's motion, and it flew from south to north. That's what people from the south areas are reporting, that it flew from south to north. In the east, the brightness was much lower than the sun. Its color was red, and the shape was that of a ball or artillery shell with a long tail. Usually, eyewitnesses from the east said a red fiery broom or a red sheaf was flying, and it was swiftly moving in the western direction, leaving no trace behind. And the duration of that phenomenon, they claimed, did not exceed a few minutes. So those are very different. That doesn't make much sense at all unless they're seeing two totally different things.
What if
coming.
the second group is mentally unwell?
I guess maybe. But what that's also saying is that people from the east saw it heading west-northwest, but they're claiming basically just north. And people from the, oh, sorry, that was people from the south. And people from the east are seeing it go from the east to the west. So that sounds, again, like those same trajectories that were being noticed.
Throw your hands in the air.
Weird.
You're weird.
No, my smoky stick just stopped
You're still weird.
smoking. Like it's
But,
activating, but it ain't producing nothing.
Okay, so I think it is time for final thoughts.
Yeah. Hang on. There's a few other things about the blast, but if the so yeah, this is this is going on to talk about two fucking bodies. So when you're reconstructing the event, it says it seems conceivable that two space objects exploded at Tunguska due to its internal energy, its concentration approaching that of a nuclear explosion. The explosion was accompanied by ionizing radiation and radioactive fallout. The ionizing radiation induced a magnetic disturbance in the ionosphere, which developed into a local geomagnetic storm lasting about 5 hours. Somehow, the second object survived this fiery explosion and flew further west. But it has never been found. No more evidence has been recovered. And yeah, pretty much any idea of this being a fucking asteroid or a meteor or a piece of a comet or any fucking thing like that does not compute.
Nothing does. Nothing computes. My final thoughts are that, I can't help but stay with the original asteroid theory that, had so much velocity coming in that its own air cushion became dense enough to explode it, and it just shot off pieces. But I'm not a scientist, nor am I a geologist, and that just sounds most plausible to me, even if it's not at all plausible in any way.
Right.
It's just, that's, to my dumb brain, it sounds right. But it is,
Now, this is
certainly
100%
a mystery.
by definition a UFO, but I am not, saying that I'm leaning toward extraterrestrial, like intelligent extraterrestrial intervention
Right.
or origins.
As much as I would like to, I can't either.
Well, but what keeps me on the fence about like what the F is the possibility of these two things. Like even if it broke up, they're not both flying at the same speed anymore because, right, the lighter one is going to lose speed faster or whatever, however that works. They're not going to be flying at the same speed. If it broke up before the point of detonation, or let's say impact or whatever they're calling it, yet again, something else would have had to have happened. There would have been evidence of a smaller blast or something happening to break it apart. And then those two pieces go flying off in the same directions. But I don't know that they would go in the same speed like that. I don't know that. I don't. It's just too weird. It's just too fucking weird to say that it's a rock that just did this weird miraculous thing.
Yeah.
Especially when when it comes down to all these weird elements and almost no physical evidence being recovered other than these weird little sphericals that don't make any fucking sense to the size of what this thing had to be. For us to never have found a giant fucking rock just sitting somewhere that is of meteor,
It was made of marshmallow cream, and we all know it. And everybody in the Tunguska area had a wonderful day of s'mores.
That sounds like it would bring a lot of ants. That's how you get ants.
You know how you get ants is you've just listened to another. God damn it, Chris! Why can't you give us even small wins for the knowledge and answer column? Episode of See No, Hear No, Speak No.
I can't because I don't wanna, but I am curious to hear other people's thoughts out there as to what the fucking shit this you would, give us some goofy theories or whatever the fuck you want. In reference to our UFOs, conspiracies, and murders. You bitches.
Email us at snhnsnpod@gmail.com. That's all one word, all lowercase. And
right.
Email us your theories or your show ideas or your ire. Give us some of that.
No dick pics, please, unless they're specifically.
No, we're gonna just keep that as a blanket. No, actually,
attention.
I think. Countdown.
Attention, Jason.
3.
This is a dick pic.
2.
It's just for you.
1.
Later, kids.
I can cut that part out. I'm not as scared of it. Bye.
You're not good.
It's getting faster. Everyone should go ahead and ask her. Love like yours will surely come my way. Hey, hey, hey. Every day seems a little longer. Every way love's a little stronger. Come what may, do you ever long for true love from me? It's getting closer, going faster than a roller coaster. Love like yours will surely come my way. Hey, hey, hey.